South Africa celebrates a rise in the matric pass rate. The demand and pressure for jobs leads to an increase in applicants falsifying their educational qualifications to enter the job market. South Africa's unemployment rate is currently sitting at 32%. Employers have been urged to ensure that they verify all qualifications. To discuss the importance of verification, joining us on the line this afternoon is Jennifer Barkhuizen, Head of Marketing at MIE 8 Division of Meters. A very good afternoon to you, Jennifer, and welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
So could you take us through, first and foremost, the importance of verifying qualifications and the process? What exactly is involved in this verification process?
I'm happy to. So when it comes to the verification of a qualification, it's important that the qualification that you verify directly with the source. And that is something that we assist companies with. So if you are varying a matric qualification or a tertiary qualification, it's very important to go directly to the source. The reason for that is if you are presented with a document, it might look authentic to you, to the untrained eye, if I can call it that, because you don't deal with it on a daily basis. Excuse me. And if you are then verifying directly with the source, you should be on the system and it will show whether you have achieved or not achieved your qualification. And the importance of that is, especially looking at your matric qualification, I mean, this is your first qualification that you have obtained in your life. And if you are not studying further and you're entering the job market, the companies need to keep in mind that they need to find the best possible talent. And if they are enforcing the screening process within the organization, they have fostered or rather I would say they have created that an environment where you know that everybody goes through the same screening process and the best person are hired for the organization.
And what are the implications on employers if they don't verify their candidates?
So if you are not verifying your potential employees that you are looking or you're going through, and you are hiring them hoping that they would do the job at hand, they maybe have impressed you in the interview, but they don't have the physical qualification. Now, over and above the time you've spent on, over and above the time you've spent on interviewing that person, you have now appointed them, you go to training. So it has a financial implication if you are hiring a person not qualified for the position. It can also have an impact on the rest of your workforce. If it comes to light that somebody was appointed and they might not have the qualification required for the position, then, it can be demoralizing for the rest of your workforce. So it has not only a financial implication, but in your workforce as well. And it can also damage your reputation, whether it is in the public eye or even with your customers.
And what are the measures that businesses can put in place and implement in order to protect the integrity of their hiring process?
First and foremost, it's very important that the company has policies in place when it comes to the recruitment process. If you have a background screening policy in place, that will ensure that everybody knows what the process is with onboarding a new person into the organization. And you would know that everybody goes through the screening process. And this can be whether you are applying for an entry-level position or for a more senior position. Everybody is going through that screening process, and there's no shortcut. So if you in your organization say that all qualifications needs to be vetted, that needs to be done so that it will come to light if somebody claims to have a qualification which they don't, and then you might just avoid having financial losses or reputational damage because it won't come out afterwards and it won't have an impact on your workforce or your clients.
So what does one do in the event that an employee has falsified qualifications and you find out as an employer?
So if you find this out as an employer, hopefully you find this out before you've actually employed them or onboarded them into your organization, because the screening process typically happens before a person joins the organization. And that's why I said it's very important that everybody goes through the same process before you make an offer to a candidate. that will put the integrity of that person in question, and you would most likely not offer the position to that candidate. From a candidate's perspective, it's very important to also highlight, I'm sure a candidate won't highlight if they are submitting a fraudulent document, but if they may be still studying towards their qualification, rather be upfront about it and mention it to the employer. Now, if you go through this process and the document that you have submitted to be verified is found to be fraudulent, it is up to the institution, the issuing institution, now whether this is a qualification or with one of the universities, then it's up to that institution to open up a criminal case against that individual specifically. From an MIE perspective, what we do is we would list that candidate with the Southern Africa Fraud Prevention Services, and you would also then be flagged on various platforms, because I think people sometimes think that submitting or tampering with a document is not that big of a deal. However, it is seen as a criminal offense, and if you are found guilty, you can either pay a fine or you can face jail time.
So let's look at this from another perspective, and here's a scenario I'd like to paint for you. Let's say an employer hires somebody, but the employer doesn't ask for any sort of certification, doesn't do any sort of vetting. Changes are made a little while later, perhaps to the job spec, and this employee, we find out now, was doing the said jobs without the qualification that is required. What happens in a scenario like that? Is there anybody at fault? Can the employer, take any sort of action against the employee, or can the employee continue in that position, be upskilled? How does one deal with a situation like that?
Yes, there's actually so many scenarios. So this will really depend on, even if you haven't gone through the screening process, but maybe on your application or on your CV or in your interview, you have mentioned that you do have a matric or you do have a tertiary qualification. If that comes to light later on that you didn't have that qualification, it is up to the organization to have processes in place to deal with a situation like that. So everybody will deal with it differently, if I can put it in layman's terms. Now, most organizations would take drastic measures when it comes to that. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of organizations within in the country, but I believe that they should take drastic measures, because you have appointed a person who has ultimately lied to you. They've committed fraud if they've provided you with a falsified document, or they've embellished the qualifications that they have. So this person is not qualified for the position. And looking at it from an individual perspective, they might have gotten the job over and above somebody who has actually put in the work and worked hard for their qualification, and they might not have been offered the job. So it's important for the companies that if they don't go through the screening process and it's implemented at a later stage, to maybe do rescreening. We've seen that a lot of organizations are doing annual screening of their employees, because anything can change at any time within the profile, whether it's your additional qualifications, criminal record, etc. And then when they do go through this process to implement screening that is compulsory, they need to also have a process in place that should something come to light that wasn't brought to light initially when the person was appointed, then how they would best deal with it. Because as I said, this is not a slap on the wrist.
It has issues, and issues of integrity as well. Jennifer, we'll have to leave it at that for this afternoon, but thank you so much for that insight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer Barkhuizen, Head of Marketing. Bye-bye, Jennifer, at MIE, a division of Meters.